Welcome to Wordpath, the show about Oklahoma Indian languages and the people who are teaching and preserving them. Before we begin tonight's show, I'd like you to take a look at this announcement. Hello, the Wordpath show is sponsoring a contest to come up with new words for Boomer Sooner in an Indian language. The English words are as follows, pardon my singing. Boomer Sooner, Boomer Sooner, Boomer Sooner, Boomer Sooner. I'm a Sooner born and a Sooner bred, and when I die I'll be a Sooner dead. Rah, Oklahoma, Rah, Oklahoma, Rah, Oklahoma, okay you. Verse 2 goes Oklahoma, 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 and continues the same as the first one. A judging panel will be put together from the Wordpath crew and Indian community leaders. The winning entrant will be invited to appear on Wordpath and perform their entry. Prize money of $50 so far has been offered for the best effort. The deadline will be August 1st, 1998. These then are the official Wordpath Boomer Sooner contest rules. Number 1, all entries must consist of the following: the name, address, and telephone number of the entrant, a tape of Boomer Sooner, 1 or 2 verses in an Indian language, and identification of what the language is, a written version in the Indian language with an English translation, a signed statement that the lyrics are the original creation of the entrant and that the Wordpath show has permission to play and display the entry on the air if it's chosen as the winner. Number 2, the lyrics must be in a Native American Indian language of any of the tribes headquartered in Oklahoma. The lyrics need not be a translation of the English words, but should suggest a fight song mentioning pride, the desire to win, support for the team, and things like that. Lyrics will be checked with a native speaker of the language for fluency and for accuracy of the translation. Lyrics will be judged by their singability, so keeping at least some repetition as in the English original is advised, for their positive spirit and for authenticity of the language. Number 3, send entries to Wordpath, 1506 Barclay Street, Norman, Oklahoma, 73071. All entries must be postmarked by August 1st, 1998. 5, the tune to Boomer Sooner is in the public domain, not copyrighted or copyrightable, but the lyrics remain the property of the entrant. Number 6, materials will not be returned unless sufficient return postage is included with the entry. Number 7, a prize of $50 will be awarded by our panel of judges. This information may be updated if additional prize money is donated, in which case more than one prize may also be offered. Watch Wordpath for the latest prize information. The judges reserve the right not to award a prize if the number or quality of entries is low. The contest, this is number 8, the final rule, the contest is open to all Oklahoma residents. Now if you missed anything that I just said, or if you'd like a printed version of the rules, you can pick them up soon around Norman, probably places like Tribes Gallery, Windmill, Levite of Apache, and similar places. Good luck and get writing. Tonight we're going to be talking about the Kansa language, and my guest is Michelle Lilburn. She's Language Program Coordinator for the Kaw Nation. Welcome, Michelle. Thanks for coming.
Thank you, Alice.
I first met you at OSU, actually, in a linguistics course taught by Professor Susan Garcon, right, a few years back.
Right.
And we've kind of bumped into each other at conferences off and on since then.
True.
I don't know that much about your personal background. Maybe you can tell us, where you're from and what your background is with respect to the Kansa language.
Okay. I'm of mixed blood descent. I'm Kaw, Cherokee, and Potawatomi. My mother grew up around Ponca City, Oklahoma, which is very near where the Kaw tribe is located. And her family was originally from around Newkirk. I was born in California. My folks moved out there when I was younger.
So you're not a speaker of Kansa, right?
No.
As I understand. Are there any fully fluent speakers now of the language?
There are none that I've met yet. We have one gentleman who said that he spoke Kansa when he was younger, and that through studying some materials that he's gotten a hold of, that he's brought a good deal of the language back, but I haven't had an opportunity to meet with him yet.
Well, that sounds promising. Did you hear the language when you were growing up, or was it already that rare that you just didn't hear it?
No, actually my family, no one in my family speaks Kansa. So.
Well, nevertheless, I know that you've been doing a lot of research on the language, and you know a lot of words in the language without really being a speaker. we often start our program by asking the guests to tell us how to greet someone in their language. Maybe you could start us off with that.
Sure, no problem. Like a lot of the Siouan languages, we have two separate greeting words for men and women. A man would say aho, and a woman would say hawe. My understanding is that that's also what Osage speakers would say. So.
Now, if you say hawe to me, do I say the same thing back, or how would I respond?
I believe so. I think that in the past that there probably were some more ritualized greetings. Perhaps when someone came to your house, you would say something, they would make a certain statement back. I haven't been able to locate any of those yet. So.
Well, it's kind of an unusual situation. I wish it were more unusual for the tribe to have, possibly no speakers left.
Right.
Some people that know some words, though. And as language program coordinator, well, to put it bluntly, can you explain to us what you do? What when you have, in a way, so little to go on? And we
Right.
probably shouldn't even be laughing about this. I'm being awkward in my wording.
Oh,
but
I
really,
know what you mean.
there are other tribes that are in pretty similar situations.
Right.
Maybe you can share with us what can be done, what is going on
Right.
at Kaw Nation now, and what do you do in your work?
All right. We were fortunate enough to receive a grant from ANA, Administration for Native Americans, to start the planning phase of a language program. The focus of this grant is locating the sources of information on the Kansa language and compiling an inventory, and then developing a 5-year plan for how we will proceed from this point to try to revitalize the language as much as possible. So I was lucky in that we do have several sources. Dr. Robert Rankin, who's a professor of linguistics at the University of Kansas, had worked with one of our last really fully fluent speakers back in the mid-70s. Her name was Maud Macaulay Rowe, and she was, goodness, I'm not even sure how old she was when he was working with her, but I know she passed away, I think, in maybe 1977, I believe. She had, he worked with her from the summer of 1974 through the summer of 1976. So we have some recordings that he did, and then we have a 3,500 word lexicon that he compiled from that. Now the basis for that was James Owen Dorsey's slip file from the Smithsonian, or from the National Anthropological
So he was going
Archives.
through and rechecking what was on those slips, basically?
Yes, exactly. In the lexicon, there are some words that will have a JOD designation, which means that it perhaps is an archaic word or one that has just fallen out of usage. And so basically it's a word that he found in Dorsey but that Ms. Rowe didn't recognize. And then there are some words that just have an MR designation, which means that she threw out a new word, one that hadn't been in Dorsey.
Right.
And then if there's no designation, it shows that she concurred with Dorsey's form, or that it was recognizable to her.
Is there anything in those tapes or those written materials besides just single words? Are there any texts, as linguists call them?
Yes.
Strings of sentences and so forth?
Right. Yes, actually there is. He had, he basically went through Dorsey's dictionary, or Dorsey's word list for, let's see, we have 55 CDs averaging about 70 minutes in length. And the first 30-some are going over the Dorsey dictionary. The remainders are texts that Dorsey collected. There is a version of the Lord's Prayer, which Ms. Rowe recites in Kansa. And then there are some stories, some traditional stories, things on
great.
customs, things like
That
that.
sounds
So
great.
we're very, very lucky to have that. We are so lucky that we have that resource.
Is there any other kind of archival resource like that? Or I guess part of your job is to find whether there is or not.
Right, exactly.
Where does one look?
Oh, goodness. I'm looking at historical societies. Since our tribe was located in Kansas for quite a long period of time, actually the name of the state, Kansas, is taken from Kansa, the name of the tribe, and the Kansas, or the Kaw River, as it's known up in there, is named after our tribe. But there are quite a few papers at the Kansas Historical Society. My understanding is that there is some Kaw vocabulary in the Morehouse papers up there. So I need to go up there and, of course, bring those back for the tribal archives, and hopefully there will be some things there that maybe we'll be able to use.
What about, are there old agency records that might possibly
Right.
have some language in them?
Right, and I'm also looking at those. I've gone to the National Archives, or actually the Federal Records Center in Fort Worth, and I need to go back there and actually see what I can do about getting copies of some of those agency reports. I think those are probably going to be the things that are most helpful. What I'm looking for primarily, Dr. Rankin did a lot of really good work, and we have a lot of vocabulary because of that. And he was, eliciting verb paradigms. So, it's like I saw it, you saw it, he saw it, we all saw it, just you and I saw it.
Boring
Things like
work
that.
for the poor native speaker, I think, but it's a wonderful resource
Right.
to have.
It's wonderful that we have it. Unfortunately, one of the things that I'm having trouble locating is casual, informal speech, just normal conversational speech. What do you say when your friend comes over? How do you tease your grandkid?
Right.
Things like that.
I'm always
And those are
telling
the
people
things
when
I'm
you record
really-
your language, don't just go through a word list. Make sure you get that stuff too.
Right.
The kind of things that people often don't put in a dictionary, that you don't find in a grammar book,
Oh, yeah.
that aren't part of a prayer or a recited
Right.
thing, but it's just that everyday, real live language in action, chit chat.
Exactly.
Yeah,
I
that'll
would-
probably be the hardest to recapture if it can be done at all.
It would be so nice just to be able to hear the rhythm of a natural conversation in Kansa
yes.
to
Wouldn't that be
fluent
wonderful?
speakers. So.
Well, good luck.
that'd
I
be
hope
very
you find lots of other goodies. It sounds like you have
Thank
a
you.
lot to go on.
Yeah.
But, of course, the more the better.
Right.
Now, in talking about your language and your tribe, you've used two terms, Kansa and Kaw. Can you explain the difference, or is there a difference?
We tend to use the two words sort of interchangeably when referring to ourselves. Most Kaw people tend to refer to themselves as Kaws, although our name in our language for each other is Kansa. But
I realize I haven't been pronouncing that version of the name very well. I
Oh,
tend
yeah.
to think of Kansas, so I say Kansa, but it's
and
more
that's how most
Kansa,
people
right?
say it. That's actually, and when people refer to the tribe, that's how a lot of people say it. Actually, a lot of Kaw speakers, unless they're speaking Kaw, won't pronounce it as Kansa.
That's sort of
They'll
like the
pronounce it-
English pronunciation of.
Exactly.
Very interesting.
So, but I tend to use Kaw when I speak of the tribe and Kansa when I speak of the language.
Oh, I see.
Or
So you
Kansa
can
when I
interchange
speak
them,
of the
but you can also make that distinction.
Right.
And the official name of the tribe is Kaw Nation.
The
right?
Kaw Nation of Oklahoma.
And they used to speak Kansa, and we hope they will again.
That's right.
Very good.
Yes.
Now, we met when I was giving a talk in Sue Garçon's class, but you've just recently, actually with Sue, I think, you've given a talk at the
Right.
Stabilizing Indigenous Languages Conference in Louisville, right?
Right.
What was that about, and how did it go?
Well, we talked about some of the process of starting to the process that a tribe that is just starting from scratch would go through, where specifically the cause that we went through, in utilizing some of these historical sources. When we don't have speakers, when we have maybe some people who remember words, who remember phrases, but who aren't conversational. So we talked about some of the resources that we had to work with. Sue and I had done a project one summer where we went over the lexicon and some other materials and kind of evaluated them, tried to come up with some suggestions for ways that they could be utilized to produce learning materials, and maybe the things we'd have to do to adapt them in order to make them really usable. So we talked about that quite a bit, and then I also talked about having started working up at the tribe some of the types of requests for information, some of the things that people really wanted to know about the language, because a lot of the people at the tribe were very excited about the idea of having a program to try to teach at least something about the language. They did seem to have a real hunger to be able to incorporate that into their daily lives. So I fielded quite a few requests for, of course, nouns, so that they can name things. And people were very interested in naming organizations, buildings. A lot of people, I've noticed a lot of Indian people name their pets with Indian words. I mean, there's just little things like that come up. But it's encouraging because it shows that people are thinking about it. People want to incorporate it in their daily lives in a meaningful way.
So there's definitely an interest there.
Right.
At the conference, were there a lot of people that were needing to know this information?
There were quite a few, actually. I was surprised at the turnout we got. I really shouldn't say this, but I scanned the titles of the other talks and I thought, boy, I don't know. I really didn't think anyone would show up. And I looked out there and we got a really good turnout. So.
Well, I think even people that have some fluent speakers still need those same kind of resources. It can certainly enrich your program, and it would be a shame to have something sitting in some dusty archive somewhere, and the tribe whose language it is not knowing about it. So
exactly.
I think it's real important for people to be able to do that. When you are trying to come up with places, lists of places to go and look for materials, where do you start? How did you start? Other than I know you
Oh, yeah.
probably already knew about Professor Rankin's work,
Right.
but when you kind of were at the stage of saying, what next? How did you approach that? How did you come up with some of the archives and the names of places that you did? Is it a lot of networking or?
A lot of that. Two different things, actually. One thing, networking is incredibly important. I've found that the human resources are as important as anything else, simply because, especially when you're working with materials that linguists have gathered, a lot of times perhaps the material has not been published, perhaps it has not been published widely. So there's a lot of work that has been done that's not really all that widely available. It's maybe sitting on a shelf somewhere or sitting in a filing cabinet in this professor's office. And so if you can make the contacts with those people, if they know who you are and you know who they are and that they've actually done the work, then you have the opportunity to get some of those materials. And everyone I've talked to, everyone I've met has been very willing to share those. I haven't had any problems with that. It's just finding out who has it. And then as far as locating things in archives, if in doubt, I start with a bibliography of a book written on the Kaw. And then everything you find from there will also have another list of sources, and one thing leads you to another. And occasionally you stumble across something that you didn't expect.
And it's a pretty interesting search too, isn't it?
It is, it is.
Well, let me move on to our next topic here that we said we'd talk about, which was specifically some language activities that you've been designing and creating for children, for Kaw children. What sort of things have you been doing, and how has it been received?
Oh, all right. Well, I had the opportunity to go into the Kaw City Public School and work with the pre-K and kindergarten class. What had happened was the teacher had arranged a field trip at the Kansa Museum. And so we did a little program for the kids, taught them a few words, let them try on a shawl and dance, explain the significance of some of the items in the collection, and let them look at some photographs, some things like that. It went pretty well. The kids were interested in it.
Were the children Kaw children, or some yes and some no?
Some yes, some no, some children from different tribes. There are probably more Kaw children up in Newkirk than Kaw City, actually, because that's where our tribal housing authority is. So, but Debbie Taylor is the teacher's name, and she invited me to come into her classroom and teach the children some Kaw vocabulary, some Kansa vocabulary. And that went pretty well. It was fun. It was actually my favorite part of the week because the kids were so cute and they're so excited. You know, so I started doing activities. At first it starts out with just the word list. Okay, I'm going to teach you what the word for this is. I'm going to teach you what the word for that is. And that even got boring for me after all. I could see why, you know, they only had a 15-minute attention span because there just wasn't anything all that engaging there. So I decided to look for some props and things. What I found was these really cute little masks made out of this sort of fun foam. They're like these little foam sheets, and they look like various animals. And I decided to surprise them with them. I just brought them in a bag, and the first day I turned around and I covered my face up. I stood with my back to them and I put the mask on. And basically how I would start out is I would give them the words, we would talk about them, I would pronounce them, I would have them pronounce them, I'd write them on the board so that they could refer to them. And anyway, so then I turned around and I put the mask on, and I turned around and I said, "What am I?" And they thought that was hilarious. They thought that was the funniest thing to see me in a pig mask. Anyway, so
that sounds great.
The masks were very popular. Then we started a game where the kids would, I would hold the mask up, and whoever called out the name of the animal first got to wear the mask. They really liked that. We did some things with beanbag animals. Also, it was like a toss game, so they liked that. Another thing that we did was trying to incorporate vocabulary into some tribally sponsored activities. I've also done things like posting signs around the office. So we have things like by the coffee maker, of course, it says "Molkan Sabe," 5 cents, you know. So if nothing else, everybody at the tribe now knows that coffee is Molkan Sabe, which literally is black medicine. So
I know they say it the same way in Ponca too.
Oh, okay. Okay.
I love that. I think it's just the perfect name for coffee.
Oh, exactly. I know. When I wake up in the morning, I know I'm definitely needing it. So.
Now, what about this moccasin material, Michelle? Is that part of a language activity?
Yes. Well, not really a language activity specifically. It's more of a cultural activity that we tried to incorporate some language in. What I did was I worked up a list of the supplies that we were going to use. These are, of course, made out of deer hide. So we gave them the word for deer, which is tha. Then taha would be deer skin. Then the words for things like the beads, which are hinska. Then the various colors. For example, this has beadwork in white, which is ska, red, which is juje, and black, which is sabe. And let's see, the word for sinew, we use sinew to sew them together, which is takan. And then, let's see, what else did I have the words for? Things like the word for needle, the word for scissors, and those are words that that I actually can't remember off the top of my head at the moment. But this was a fun way to bring the language into sort of a cultural context, and also to share it with some adults and some children, bring it in a mixed group. So I really enjoyed doing that.
Was this an activity that took place at the tribe then, at the Kaw Nation?
Right. We took the class every, I believe it was Wednesday night for about 6 weeks. So yeah.
Well, this is good. I really like bringing language and culture together. I think it makes it stick in people's minds better too.
Oh yeah.
And especially if it's an activity that they want to learn, you can sort of piggyback the language on that. That's very good. And I love that you put up signs in Kaw.
Oh yeah.
That's great.
Yeah.
Well, what are your plans for the future? Is this ANA project going to continue, or
well,
where do things stand?
As it stands right now, we have funding through August, the end of August, and then after that, of course, things are up in the air. Anything that's funded by grants. We're working on some other proposals, and of course, we're working on ideas for things that can continue without any type of major funding, things that could continue tribally funded. Since the whole purpose of this grant is to sort of figure out exactly where we are and what we have to work with, and then figure out where can we get from here, and what's the time frame going to be. It's hard to be sure exactly what we'll be doing. I'm hopeful. I personally am hopeful that we'll be able to bring the get people at least using Kaw vocabulary on a regular basis. Hopefully bring it into the home so that people are using it with their families. I found one thing is that the words that people do remember, that a lot of people remember, are the words that you use in the home, that you use with your family, particularly food words. Almost every Kaw person I've run across knows that when you say wanomle, it means come and eat. So if there's food involved, they're not far behind, and they didn't pick up on that real quickly. But certain food items people remember, and those words are used fairly widely. So I'm hoping that we'll be able to bring maybe more of those words into that category so that people will be using them pretty regularly. And then also we want to work on composing songs, a Kansa flag song, which is something that we haven't had for a long time. So that's something that we're working on. And
once you get the really important stuff like that done, don't forget about our Boomer Sooner contest.
Of course, of course.
I'd love to sing Boomer Sooner in the Kansa.
Sure, we'll get our guys working on it.
Absolutely.
No problem.
There's a $50 prize in it.
Hey, there you go. That could fund something.
Seriously though, you've made several references here to writing things out and making signs, and writing things on the board. How do you write this language if it's not in common usage? I assume there's no official alphabet. What sort of system are you using, and how is that working for people?
I'm using sort of a modified IPA system, International Phonetic Alphabet. It's pretty much based on the way Dr. Rankin transcribed most of the words in his lexicon, with some modifications. We have a lot of we have 3 nasal vowels in Kaw, which are used pretty commonly. We have on, e, and o. And there are different ways of writing those, of course. You see some people, they use the nasal hook at the bottom, and some people, use the tilde, and some people what I've finally settled on for the purposes of the things that I'm working on right now anyway is sort of that little raised N that you see sometimes. It looks almost like in sort of superscript. Because, well, the reason that I settled on it is, for one thing, it's easy to do on a regular keyboard. I can do it in WordPerfect very, very easily. And it's sort of familiar to people. People who've been working informally have been using that for a while. And for the people that I've been working with anyway, it seems to kind of give the appearance of it seems to give some clue about the nature of the sound.
It's a little more clear what it means.
Right, because if you just use a regular N, then they're going to do on instead of on. And so I like the fact that the N is sort of little, and it gives the impression that it's trailing off. But anyway, so that's working fairly well. I've had a lot of latitude so far as deciding how to represent the sounds in Kansa, simply because people haven't been working with it, so there's no one who is really terribly attached to any one way of writing things. I'm striving for the one sound, one symbol,
Right.
and trying to get away from I don't have a problem with writing things in sort of a familiar English style spelling if it makes people more comfortable, but I want to be sure that we're not doing it in a way that's going to be confusing. Because, I mean, we all know how confusing English spelling is for
Right.
English speakers.
So it's probably still a little early to think in terms of suggesting that the tribe adopt particular usage as the tribal official alphabet. Or
Right. As I'm
do you see that
developing
down the road,
things-
maybe?
Oh yeah, we're going to have to.
Yeah.
At some point. As I'm developing things, you know, there may be some corrections, there may be some changes that we make, you know, as I get more feedback from people.
Right.
But, yeah, before too long, I think that's going to have to be one of the steps in our plan, is adopting an official orthography so that we can start preparing written materials. We want to be consistent.
Sure. Well, thank you so much, Michelle. They're just telling me we're running out of time, so we're going to have to wrap it up. But I'm very impressed at how much you have been able to do and how you've had children involved and trying to get things in the home and putting up signs and just a great variety of things, not just looking for archival sources. I think you've been very creative and very successful, and I wish you every success in the future in your work.
Thank you very much.
Thanks again for being here.
Thanks.
Join us next time on Wordpath.
Na hene yo hene, na hene yo hene, ana magwana kita, wa pene manaone kita. Na hene yo hene, na hene yo hene, ana magwana kita, wa pene manaone kita. Na hene yo hene, na hene yo hene, ana magwana kita, wa pene manaone kita. Na hene yo hene, na hene yo hene, ana magwana kita, wa pene manaone kita. Na hene yo hene, na hene yo hene, ana magwana kita, wa pene.